Hello there again. I figured I'd add a little more information for the kind of the last few tasks on this worksheet, just to make sure you understand it as well as you might, especially if I'm not around to help. So you should have, from the last video, been able to get to the website, kind of set up your experiment, and base your experiment around a question, which was how does competition affect growth? So the whole point of the research is figuring out how or does competing species, so species fighting for food against one another, does that play a role in the size of each species population? And in this example, we're talking about single-celled microorganisms, the paramecium. But the idea in general, it's worthy of thought for humans as well. So the results of competition here may in fact also say something about competition among humans too, and conflict. So as you go through this, and now that you've kind of set up the experiment, you've decided what the independent variable is. And if you know what the independent variable is, you know what the experimental group is. Remember, go to your notes. But you set up this experiment and grew the paramecium populations separately and together. So this test tube 3 shows where the competition is happening, right? The independent variable. And right here, 4 just wants to make sure you understand what your experimental design was. And remember, the experimental group is the group that contains the independent variable. And any test tubes that do not contain the independent variable are not control groups. And really, just down here, just wants you to summarize what you know, as we discussed from the last video. Right here in part 5 is where you talk about what you saw. What do you think the carrying capacity, and that's a term that's in your textbook. What do you think the carrying capacity is for the paramecium species when the paramecium caudatum live alone? What's their carrying capacity? When the paramecium aurelia in their test tube alone, what is their carrying capacity? And why do you think that? Why do you think the carrying capacity for either was anything? So what do you play a role? So this idea of carrying capacity, remember, so as you look at the data or the information from the table, so remember, just to clarify, the data, you're basing everything you think on this information. So this is the data you collected from your experiment, right? So, and again, it says data right here. So you're basing all your ideas and the results and your conclusions on this table. This is the only thing you have currently to base any of your ideas on. So when it comes to carrying capacity, you're basing it on what you saw here. All right. And simple, use the data table. Look for similarities. Is there any similarities between the two species as the population changed? Is there any differences in the way the population changed when you look at the data table? So this part right here, this compare contrast, you're looking at the data table and you're looking but look at the test tube separately. So P. aurelia separately, P. caudatum separately. Look how each one grows separately and compare and contrast. Find similarities or patterns. So you're looking for patterns, right? Is there a similar pattern in the way their population grew? Or is there a similar pattern in the way the population didn't grow? It just depends on the results. And then you say, what are different ways the population changed for P. aurelia compared to caudatum? That's the contrast. All right, this part is what I want to focus on, and this is the part with the new paragraphs of information to read. So this information inside this box is for you to summarize. You use this information right here to document. So what are 2 important ideas from this paragraph, and you put them here. You write them in. 2 summaries in your own words. So whatever you read here, just whatever, however you think it means, or whatever you think it means, write in your own words in these boxes. Just 2 important ideas. And then we should be doing something with that later. Okay, it says use above ideas. So the ideas you summarized in your own words to help draw conclusions on the competing. So you're going to already know what happens when they compete. You're going to know if both species do fine, one does, one doesn't. You're going to find that out just by looking at the data table. What we need is for you to then relate the results to what other scientists have studied. So The ideas you summarized here should be important ideas about what scientists have learned about competition. And it starts out, the first word is competition. And that's what's happening when they're in the test tube. They're competing somehow. So you're basically writing right here, you're saying, well, I think the results that we saw blank happened because, as other scientists have found, blank. So report on what they're finding here and relate it to what you decided. Does what the scientists talk about in this paragraph, does it match what you saw in the data table? Does it? Does it not? Why? Why not? So that's all. You do the last thing here. Anything you write down here is based on your data table and also using ideas from here. And again, you're using ideas from this box up here. So any information here you're using to support and connect with your results in the data table. And that's what you do. So when I read this, what I'm looking for is you talking about your results and connecting it to what you've read and being able to share something that you've read to help better explain what you saw in the data table. Good luck.